Hello everyone, and thank you for helping me create this instructional video on special education and 504 services. I'm going to go ahead and start this off by stating that my goal position is to be an elementary principal or assistant principal. Let's get started. First, we are covering special education services through the Disabilities and Education Improvement Act, IDEIA or IDEA. IDEA is to ensure that all children with disabilities have available to them a free and appropriate public education, or FAPE. Those who qualify for IDEA must have a qualifying disability that falls under 13 specific categories. This is different from Section 504, which is more broad. The categories listed are a specific learning disability, like dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, auditory processing disorder or nonverbal learning disability, autism spectrum disorder or ASD, emotional disturbance, including but not limited to anxiety disorder, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, and depression, a speech or language impairment, a visual impairment, one that cannot be corrected by eyewear, like what I have on, deafness, even if the student has a hearing aid, hearing loss that is not covered by deafness, deaf blindness, an orthopedic impairment like cerebral palsy, an intellectual disability like Down syndrome, a traumatic brain injury, a TBI, multiple disabilities, or an other health impairment which covers conditions that limit a child's strength, energy, or alertness. To qualify for IDEA, a student must receive a referral to evaluation and then notify and receive consent from the parent or guardian in order to assess the student with a full individual and initial evaluation, or FIE. The procedural safeguards are given to the parent or guardian of the student so that they understand their rights and due process. Once the evaluation is complete, students, as well as their parents or guardians, their special ed teacher, their classroom teacher, local education agency representative, myself or another administrator, psychologist or diagnostician, a transition services participant, as well as other necessary persons like an interpreter or advocate will meet to discuss services in the student's individual education plan. Note, Section 504 does not have as many requirements as to who must be at this meeting. Once parent or guardian consent is given, services are initiated and reviewed at minimum of every year and 3 years. Please note that consent is not needed to initiate Section 504, but is needed to initiate IDEA. IDEA provides a free and appropriate education, or FAPE, defining appropriate as having educational benefit. Students are required to have an IEP that may contain one or more of the following: qualifying services like audiology, interpreting, physical or psychological therapy, transportation or school nurse and health services, accommodations or modifications like more time to complete assignments or tests or simplified assignments or tests, or other support like assistive technology. Students are required to have personalized, challenging, ambitious, and measurable short and long-term goals, and careful measuring and reporting of progress. IDEA provides legal educational protections, safeguards, and due process for students with disabilities. It also may provide a behavior intervention plan, a BIP. A big thing to remember is that IDEA provides the student with learning in the least restrictive environment, or LRE, to ensure that students are educated with their peers as much as possible. I do have concerns when it comes to special education. Do not worry about over-identification. I know that this was a worry years ago, but we should not put a cap on our learners and needs of services. I'd rather give a student too much help than vice versa. Please follow your IEP and BIPs carefully and document carefully. If you need help with either of these things, please reach out to our on-site specialists or myself. Make sure to treat your students equitably, even if you cannot see their impairment. Remember that disabilities are not the fault of the student. There are alternative STAR tests available, but that will be determined by the student's IEP committees. On to Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. Section 504 is to prohibit the discrimination on the basis of disability in any program receiving federal fund. Qualification for Section 504 is more broad than that of IDEA and constitutes the student having an impairment that greatly limits one or more major life activities. Things covered under this are, but are not limited to, asthma, ADD, ADHD, depression, or disabilities not covered by IDEA but still require classroom accommodations. The qualification process for Section 504 is very similar to that of IDEA with three major differences. There is a need for parent and guardian notification, not consent, when evaluating or initiating services. The student's 504 team has fewer requirements needing persons knowledgeable about the student and information from several sources. And finally, the student under Section 504 is to be evaluated periodically, meaning that they should be evaluated before any significant change in placement and not necessarily annually. Students may receive services under Section 504 that are similar to services to SpEd services, with a few notable differences. While students are still to receive free and appropriate education, appropriate as defined in Section 504 is comparable to students without disabilities. Students under 504 may still have an IEP or BIP and are required to learn in the least restrictive environment. However, 504 protections are enforced by the Office of Civil Rights, unlike IDEA, which is enforced by TEA. Accommodations for 504 students may include physical changes to the school that are necessary to be able to use the school building, such as installing a wheelchair ramp, handrails, or motorized doors, learning aids like calculators or iPads, changing gym class requirements for a child with asthma or other physical disability, or having someone read test questions aloud to students who have trouble reading. My concerns for Section 504 compliance are identical to those of IDEA compliance. The only thing to note here is that Section 504 does not receive funding from the federal government. Finally listed are some resources that you might explore, like idea.gov, navigatelifetexas.org, understood.org, texasprojectfirst.org, tea.gov, and the Administration and Supervision of Special Programs in Education, 4th edition by Pankaki at LEF. Thank you for your time.